Hey, what's up? How you doing? Darren Bennett here at ProtoPie, and today I've got another super exciting tutorial to share with you. I am so excited about this one. This is going to be a fairly advanced tutorial, but that doesn't mean that there isn't anybody that can achieve this. Okay, so ProtoPie is a piece of software that allows people of all skill levels to do some amazing things without a whole load of knowledge. So even though this is advanced, it's still totally achievable for you to do. Okay, so let me show you what we're going to be building. So we're going to be building this slider control, and let me just turn this off for a second. And we're going to build this slider control, which is going to be a component, so it's a reusable component, and we're going to be using it to control this card. And I'm just going to show you how it works and let the prototype do the talking here. So I'm going to slide my slider, and whoa, my card's going to do a 3D flip. So I'm controlling my card by my slider. So that's what we're going to be doing. And also, as an extra piece of functionality, I'm going to show you how you can tap on the slider control and jump to certain points of the slider control as well. So this is what we're going to be building in this video, and it's going to be covering a few more advanced concepts. It's going to be covering how you send messages, so you communicate from a component, from inside of a component to the outside. It's going to be showing you how you can use mouse position. That's what we're using to jump to these various points, so how you can use mouse position to control your slider. And it's even going to be using a secret formula inside of ProtoPie, so one that's not in the documentation currently. It's not been updated yet, but it is functionally inside the product, and it's going to be showing you that as well. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started and get building this prototype. Okay, so I've got another scene set up here. I've got a slider. The slider control is built completely within ProtoPie, so I'm just using containers and rounded corners and some colors. So we're going to start right at the beginning. We're going to go through, create the component and all the functionality inside of it. So I've got my graphic, my main group, which is the slider, the whole thing, and then inside I've got 3 containers. One is for the thumb, which is just a rectangle colored red, and then I've got a progress fill. So this is going to be, as we slide the control from left to right, it's going to fill the track up. So that's the progress fill. So that's just another rectangle. And then finally we've got the track, which is the gray rectangle here. So that's all we need. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a component. So we're just going to select it, and there's a few ways you can turn your graphics into components. You can either hit this button here, you can right click and choose convert to component. So a couple of ways to do it. So we're just going to do it from here. Okay, and our slider is now a component. You see its icon's changed. It's now got this lightning bolt inside of it. And if we just open our components panel, you can see there's the previous slider I've already created. So we've got our slider component in here. And in fact, let's just right click this, and we're going to choose go to master component because we need to edit this component. So we're going to choose that, and we're now inside of the component. So we're in a special area inside of the component. We're just going to rename this slider 2 so we can differentiate that from our other version. And you can see inside it's got my 3 containers, and that's all kind of grouped inside this component. And you can tell you're in a component because you've got this teal colored graphic at the top level of your layers panel. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make more room so we can see our triggers panel. Let's just reorganize this slightly. Okay, cool. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a trigger, and the trigger we're going to add is a where is it? A drag. So we're going to add a drag trigger, a drag trigger. Yep, I think I said that right. A bit of a tongue twister there. And we're going to select our drag trigger, and we're going to select our thumb layer. So this is effectively the bit we're going to drag with the slider. Okay, so we're now going to add a move response. And you can see here, just to take a moment, the drag trigger only has 3 responses accessible to it. You can see all the rest are grayed out. And you'll find this with certain triggers. Not all triggers have access to all responses. Okay, so we're going to use a move response here. And we're going to set the direction to be horizontal only. And we've nicely got our thumb selected as well by default, which is cool. We're going to limit the range of motion of the draggable thumb to the screen. And when it says limit to screen, it means the boundary of our container, of our component container. So this dotted line effectively is what it's going to limit to. And we're going to leave the ratio at 1. Okay, and you can see I can now drag my thumb left and right, and it won't go any further because it's limited to the screen. Cool. Okay, next we're going to make this a bit bigger. I don't know why this is so small, that's better. Next we're going to add another trigger. We're going to add a detect trigger. And detect is a trigger that detects a change in a value of something. And you have a number of properties that you can detect changes in. We're going to detect the change of the X property. And you can see that it's actually automatically selected our thumb. That's because I've got it selected over here in the layers palette. And by default, it always chooses the X property. Sometimes it has a guess about other properties depending on what the object is. But X is exactly what we want. So that's all good to go. And to this detect trigger, we're going to add a scale response. Okay, and we're going to choose the progress fill. So we want to basically, when we drag the thumb, we want the progress fill, which is this you can't actually see it here, but it's like a dark blue color. It's very, very thin because it's only 1 pixel wide. Actually, 0 pixels wide. It's on position 1. Okay, cool. So going back to our scale, we're going to scale by size rather than factor, and we're going to scale to, and we're going to change the width here, and we're going to add our first formula. And inside of this formula, we're going to choose the thumb container, and we're going to add a dot, and that brings up all of our properties. And we're going to choose the X value, and we're going to click OK. And we're going to set the duration to 0 because we want this to happen immediately. We don't want any animation to happen after we've detected the change. And we're scaling only on the width, so effectively we're going to make the progress fill scale up and become the fill value as we slide the thumb. So that's all cool. Okay, so we're going to give that a test, see what that looks like. So as you can see, we've now got our fill filling in as we scale our thumb up and down. Looking good. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a variable, and we're going to create a numeric variable, which we happen to get by default. And we're going to rename this to progress percentage. And we're going to go back to our detect, and we're going to add an assign response, and we're going to choose the variable we've just created, progress percentage, as the variable we want to assign a value to. And we're going to add our second formula. Now this is going to be a fairly long one. Well, what we're doing here, we're calculating the width of our slider. We want to turn that into a percentage of the amount of distance we've traveled. So we want it to be between 0 and 100%, no matter how wide the slider is, and you're going to be able to change the width of the slider to fit your designs. We always want it to report back between 0 and 100. So we're going to work out a percentage here. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose our thumb, and we're going to add a dot like we did before, and we're going to choose the X property, and we're going to divide that. So when we're doing programmatic arithmetic, the / is the divide symbol. So we're going to divide that, and we're going to open a bracket. Let's put a space in there. You don't have to put the spaces, just makes it a little bit more readable. And we're going to, inside of that, we're going to look for another property of another object. So this time we're going to get our track, and we're going to hit a dot, and we're going to want the track's width. We're going to use the track's width, divide by the track's width, and we're going to minus, and we're going to add yet another object, and we're going to use the thumb again, and we're going to get the thumb dot width. Okay, and we're going to close our bracket. And the reason we're putting this in brackets is we want this value to be calculated first. So bracketing these two property values forces the formula to calculate the answer to this before it continues to use it in the overall formula. So finally, we're going to add a multiplication symbol, which is an asterisk, and we're going to multiply it by 100. So this effectively is the formula to turn our hard values, our width of our track and our position of our thumb, into a percentage between 0 and 100. So we're going to click OK on that. Okay. Next, we're going to add a response called send. So within components, the way we communicate from inside of components to outside of components is by using messages. And there's two kinds of messages. There's a send message and a receive message. The receive is a trigger and the send is a response. So we want to report out of our component into our scene and basically the answer of the percentage value. So that's why we're using send. And we're going to send it to parent, and we're doing that because we want to be really explicit about the component that's using it, and it'll make more sense as we kind of do the other side of it. But fundamentally there's two ways you can send messages out. Well, there's actually more than two ways, but for the sake of what we're doing here, we could either send to the parent, which happens to be the scene because the component is sitting in the scene, so therefore it's a child of the scene, therefore this scene is its parent. We could also send to the current scene, which also is the scene, but the difference is that when you send the message to the scene, it's effectively an anonymous message. You won't know what component it's coming from. We actually want to know what component it's coming from, which is why we're going to choose send to parent. And we're going to set the message, and a message is just any text you want to type. I'm going to set mine to progress change _change, and I always do my messages in uppercase and use underscores for spaces. Messages are case sensitive, so that's the reason I do it as uppercase, so make sure I don't make a spelling mistake. And we're going to check this box, send value together, and in the input field that's just appeared, we're going to press our formula, and we're actually going to choose our progress percentage variable here. Okay, so you not only can you send messages, you can piggyback variable values with the message. You can kind of package them up together and send them together, which is really, really useful. Next, we're going to add another variable, and it's going to be a number variable. We're going to call this position. Oops, but not in caps. If I can spell it correctly, it might be helpful. and we're going to now add a receive trigger, and we're going to set the channel to receive from parent, and we're going to set the message as position, and we're going to assign the value we get back to our position variable that we've just created. Right, so we're now going to go back to our scene. Let's just come out of this and go to our scene. And just to show we've got our slide still working, and we can now just make this any length we want. Let's just going to stick it down here. And you can see now it's still working all nicely. And we're going to add a variable to our scene, and I'm just going to use a for this scene variable, and we're going to leave this as a numeric variable as well. I'm just going to rename this slider progress, but not in caps. Let me try that again. Cool. And we're going to add a trigger to our scene, and we're going to add a receive trigger. So we're going to want to now receive the message from the component, and we're going to receive the trigger from a component, and it's going to ask us what component we want to receive the message from, and we're going to choose our slider 1 component. And as soon as we've chosen that, we need to add the message. We need to say, well, what message we're going to receive from that component. And you can see that as soon as I tap into the message field, I've got my progress change message popping up. So ProtoPie has the ability, what it calls autocomplete, to show you, in some instances, to show you the messages so you don't have to type them again, which is really useful. It's also a good way of making sure you're sending the message in the right way. So like I said before, you can send to scene, you can send to parent. If you choose receive from component and you don't see a message here, you've probably not set it to send to parent, and you probably set it to send to scene or somewhere else. So it's a good way just to making sure that everything's working correctly. Okay, I'm going to choose that, and again I'm going to use this assignment capability. I'm going to remember we piggybacked the value to our message, so we're sending the percentage value from inside the component, we're sending it outside into our scene. We have to get access to that value, we have to assign it to a variable in our scene. We can't just kind of use it without doing that. So that's why we have to set a variable here in our scene, and we're going to choose that variable slider progress. Cool. So we're going to add a detect trigger to our scene, and we're going to choose our slider progress variable. So we're going to detect when there's a change in our slider progress variable. So when we slide, the message that we set up with the piggybacked value is going to be sent from inside of our component out into the scene, and every time that changes, which will happen as every time I move this slider, the detector is going to detect that value has changed, and we can then use the change value to do stuff. So we're going to do some stuff, and what we're going to do is I'm just going to grab something we can use to play around with. So I'm going to grab this card that I made earlier, and we're just going to stick that in our scene, and we're going to add a 3D rotate, I think, and we're going to make sure our card is selected, and we're going to choose rotate 2, and we're going to tap into this value, and we're going to add yet another formula, and this time our formula is going to be we can actually hit the plus button here, and we're going to choose our slider progress variable. So we want the value that's being passed out. Remember, that value is going between 0 and 100. We're using 3D rotate, so rotation has a full rotation is 360 degrees. So we actually want to multiply this value by 3.6, so we can get like a singular full rotation. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so let's click OK on that, and let's test our prototype to see what's going on. So if we slide our component, and we can see our card is sliding. Okay, but it's sliding kind of weirdly in a funny angle. So we're gonna fix a few things. The first thing we're gonna do is we're actually gonna take the animation off, and that's the reason why we get that kind of laggy animation. You might like that. You might want to keep that on. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to take it off. And the other thing I want to do is I want to change the origin point, so the pivot point, which at the moment is by default it's in the top left hand corner. So I'm going to change that to center, so right in the middle. So let's try that again and see. There we go. Now that feels a bit more controllable. I'm liking that. And you can see I've got a full rotation, so I start reading right and I rotate all the way around to now behind, so that's 180 degrees, and then I'm carrying on rotating to 360 degrees. Okay, cool. So there you go. I mean, we've built this slider control. We're controlling this card by just 3D flipping it. We could add any number of other responses to this. So we might want to add a normal rotate to it as well. And again, we can do the rotate to, and we can choose our slider progress, and we can multiply that by 3.6. And now when we slide it, we've now got, whoa, a really crazy animation. Look at that. That is crazy. And you can see it's got that lag on it again, because by default you always get an animation on it, so we can take that off, and now we've got a bit more control. Cool. So I want to show you one more thing. I promised you that we were gonna do some mouse position control. And what we want to do is we want to be able to tap anywhere on this slider. We want the thumb to jump to that position. So we're going to go back into our component, and we're going to edit our component. So you can right click on the component and go to master component. And we're going to add a tap trigger, and we're going to target the root container, so the slider control. We're going to target that, so I can tap anywhere on this control and it's going to react. And I'm going to add another assign response, and I'm going to choose our position variable that we created earlier, and I'm going to add another formula. Lots of formulas in this one. And this is where the secret formula comes in. So this secret undocumented formula that ProtoPie will hopefully add to their documentation very, very soon. But this is at the moment undocumented, but it is in the product. And what this secret formula allows you to do is it allows you to get the position of your mouse pointer relative to your scene. So the problem that we've got when we're working within components is we're actually inside of the component. So if I just use the regular mouse position variable, it's actually going to give me its position relative to the scene. And that's going to be incorrect, because my component, if actually we just kind of go back here into our scene, my component is actually at x46, but when I'm working inside of my component, it has no idea what position it is inside of my scene. So it's basically going to give us the wrong coordinate. What this new undocumented formula function is going to enable us to do is going to enable us to take into account the component's offset position in the scene, which in this current situation is 46 pixels, and therefore align when we tap the mouse to the 0 position inside of the component. And what this really is going to mean in summary is that when we tap the mouse position, it's going to align with the correct position inside of the component. Okay, I know that sounds complicated, but just bear with me and just type what I'm typing and it will all work. Okay, so we're going to select our assign, and we're going to go into our formula, and we're going to hit the FX button, and we're going to type 2, and we're going to look for toLayerX, which is the top one that's come up. Okay, and we're going to, inside of the parentheses, we're going to add a target object, and it's going to be our root slider component, and we're going to add a comma, and we're going to put our special mouse variable. So you get these a certain subset of special variables in ProtoPie, and one of them or two of them are mouse position X and mouse position Y. Special variables always start with a dollar symbol, so that's how you know they're special, and they are documented. These ones are documented. They're documented on the ProtoPie website inside the formula documentation there. You can see a whole list of them. So we're going to use the mouse one, so we're going to type a dollar symbol. And here you can see all of the special variables just pops up as soon as you hit the dollar symbol. Obviously, if you go to the documentation online, you'll get some more explanation about what they do. And we're going to choose mouse.x, mouse X. Where are you? Mouse X, there you are. And we're going to type another comma. And this time, we're going to type the dollar symbol again, and we're going to get mouse Y. Okay, so that's our completion of our special secret formula toLayerX. We're going to reference the position of the slider component, but we want it relative to the scene, and we're going to use the mouse.x and mouse.y. So when we tap, it's going to pass the position of the point we tap, which is our mouse position, and it's going to pass it in, and it's going to give us the correct coordinate, and everything's going to work beautifully, hopefully. Okay, so we've assigned our value. Now we want to add a move response, and we're going to choose the thumb because that's the object we want to move to this position when we tap with the mouse. And we're going to move its X position. Obviously, this is a horizontal slider, so we only care about the X position. So again, we're going to put yet another formula in here. Which is a very small formula. We're literally just going to choose the variable which has got our value assigned to it. So it's just adding position into here. Cool. We're going to click OK. I think we're done here. We're going to go back to the main scene, and we're going to tap. And whoa, there you go. So wherever we tap, we can see our mouse points, but you can see there's animation on it. So we've done the same thing that we've had before. We've forgot to take, or I forgot to take the default animation off. So if we go back into our component, into the tap, into the move, and we just want to set that move to 0. You may like it. Like I say, it's got a certain kind of effect. I'm going to take it off, and we're going to test that again. And now it's just going to jump to that position. So I can now drag and I can tap. Okay, there you go. So a fully working slider component. We've covered some very advanced concepts here, but hopefully you can see they're not too hard to wrap your head around. There's a bit of maths and a bit of basic kind of construction of our formulas. Formulas are really super powerful things, and you can see just how powerful they are. I've now got my slider component, which I can drag and drop into any prototype. All I have to do is add this receive trigger, this variable, and then I can use my detect to detect the value of the slider progress variable, and I can add any responses to it, and I can control whatever I want. I can add opacity, I can do a whole bunch of stuff. So there you go. That's the end of this this particular video. Hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you liked it. Please like the video. That really helped me out to kind of spread the word of these videos around YouTube. And hopefully we'll see you next time here for another amazing video. Take it easy. See you later.